So I took Nightrose for BCS Rosemont. Nightrose is a deck that utilizes the revival mechanic and also has access to the stride mechanic. Thanks to cards such as like Obadiah and Phantasm Nightrose, we're able to capitalize on the first stride on building resources, but also setting it up defensively, such as with the Sweet Shot package and also Ghost Chase, while building up their hand and of course setting up for the Phantasm turn, which we actually go into 5 attacks, giving them power on the last 2 rearguard attacks, but also getting a crit on your Vanguard as well. Check out Dueling Guard's deck boxes, playmats, and binders, the great quality products that are anime based. They continually have more anime options becoming available. Use the affiliated link in the description for a 5% discount on your next purchase. Going into the metagame expectation, obviously a lot of people were complaining about Levy Dress, Raziel, for example, decks of that nature from set 5 essentially that are pretty much dominating this format. So of all the decks, why Nightrose? Nightrose is a fun deck, 1, for sure. 2, nostalgic. 3, it does have some access to tools that can mitigate depending on the matchups that you do want to focus on. So in this case, Levy Dress, Raziel, ODM, and of course, Stride deck set mirrors essentially too. So this is what this build specifically catered to those decks essentially. It may not be like the best of the best deck, but I do feel with the hands of a good pilot, but also with a little bit of luck, I think we'll get you very far with this deck still. Going into the ratios, so the right line is what you expect, Grenache, so you can get into the Crest Giver. The Crest Giver will give you the actual crest, so that way you will scale up, of course, get the extra draw. This is actually a deck that wants to go second as well. Most other decks want to go first in the format anyway, so you losing the die route and then picking to go first isn't the end of the world. We have our boy Columbard. Columbard has helped me throughout the event to build a consistent hand to get the pieces that I want, but also set up that drops on a little bit better too before you get to your Obadiah skill. Sometimes it also saves you being able to stride, because if you don't have the grade 3 summation to stride, you're out of luck. And then of course our beautiful Nightrose from GBT08 SP Day, this beautiful Nightrose. So you can play the alternate arts, it's totally up to you. I actually decided to play all full arts in my build too as well. And so take advantage of the GB2 skill to help you get further into the 10-15 cards in drop zone. That way cards like Marauding Shade are active, but also get to those sweet spots for Philander, and then of course your Phantasm Nightrose later on too. Also quick shout out to 50 Card Shop. Thanks to them, I was able to get my deck sets in time for the event too, so shout out. If you want to support the channel, use the code Jaime in the affiliated links below as well. 3 copies of Nightrose. So as you can see, the different alternate arts. Got the one with the throne, very majestic, later in Jira. Got the one from History Collection, that one was also pretty cool. And then of course the one from the deck set too. So as you can see, 4 different artworks. So you may be asking, why 4 Nightrose total? Usually you see the 2 extra copies in the main deck and that's enough. However, with this compared to Shiranui, more times than not, you go into Magatembu. Makuro is hardly used essentially, but Phantasm is key for this deck. In fact, I wish we can go into Phantasm a lot sooner rather than second stride, of course. And I was playing a copy of Tommy, the Ghosty, which will let you fetch a copy of Nightrose, but at that point, like, you kind of need it when you actually have to perform stride. So you basically would have to have Tommy beforehand, use its skill, and then if you drove check it, it's not a Nightrose technically. And so if you're in that awkward position where you have a Tommy, but you don't have the exact Nightrose in your hand, you still can't stride into Phantasm. So at that point, I figured, like, well, if Tommy's used 9 times out of 10 to go into Phantasm, or my Nightrose to get to Phantasm, and then there are my Obadiah strides, I'd like to ditch Sea Strike and Log Off to get draws off of that. There isn't really much of a purpose of a Tommy than being the 4th actual copy of Nightrose. I was able to consistently stride. I don't think there was a time where I actually fell back to Obadiah, so thank God. There were games where I did lose, but at that point, it was just like one of those games where I had to give it all out without getting a Nightrose copy, but I was going to lose if I was going to not make that turn happen essentially anyway, so it worked out either way. This also makes it a little more easier for you not to rely on Sea Strike and Log Off to keep getting this piece, because it's one of your ways to get it from the drop or from the soul. You could also rewrite this to have additional soul too. So this can come up against the prison matchup, but also just being able to get the extra soul because we're before set 6, so we don't have the front triggers that go into soul. So this deck can struggle a little bit with soul still. The rest of the grade 3s are pretty standard. So 3 Sea Strike I was playing 4, but I felt like I was able to squeeze other stuff in and go down to 3, so it worked out. You get your grade 2 or greater pieces into your hand. This could be Marauding Shades, Negro Lazies. They could also be Azure Sky, which can further board build essentially, but it was great. So you could also ditch this 2 or more copies for the Obadiah Stride cost because you just needed so much in a grade 3. So you're going to overpay the cost of Stride with this, and you'll be drawing cards for each of these copies as well. The 1 copy of Nightstorm for power plays too. You do need a beater too. I actually tried Bovine for a while, but the power is necessary and sometimes it's already enough. So this is why I went back to Nightstorm as well. And you could also ditch it with the Obadiah Stride to get a draw as well. And then the last grade 3 is a Bracing Angel Ladder. So literally this card, I played it mostly because of the soul, really. So I did not see this in my Shurinari matchup, which was unfortunate. But it is what it is. But that would help against that. Also show the Doji because they can remove stuff from the Rigard Circle technically because of this. It gave you board resists, especially if you had against like Varga, for example, and you kept your PGs, your triggers in the back row because we do run the sweep package. So that's also important. So this card is actually really good. It's an upstart goblin in a way to get you into your pieces, but also feel that soul for you. Going to the grade 2s, 3 Morani Shade. I played 4 at once, but I realized that if I kept maximizing on him on being able to revive him with Nightrose, I just needed the 1 and that was pretty much it. And then you continually revive him during your battle phase anyway. So you literally use the same copy over and over. I mean, it's nice to have another 15k shield so you could have the 4th one if you want. But again, I wanted to fit other stuff that would be better shield value that would promote the Sweet Shot package essentially. So that's why I went back to that. 3 copies of Negrolazy. So Negrolazy is phenomenal. He works turn 3 and above, so his revival skill is not generation break restricted. But you do have to have the Nightrose name. So turn 3 is the earliest you can. If you went first and you can't stride technically, you can still revive Negrobones because that's not generation break restricted. You can revive triggers or PGs too. This is actually vital. This is one of the main reasons that Negrolazy is so good, is that he may not work during the battle phase, but during your end phase, you can revive this and bring a PG back or a trigger, such as like an OT or a front, ideally, to maximize on that too. Also, if you have an extra copy in hand, and even though your opponent may potentially damage deny you, if you actually manually call this from hand and hollow it and then just call over it, you'll get countercharge immediately. So your opponent thinking that you need to revive Negrolazy to make sure that you can countercharge, you went around it essentially. So this is a good card to be able to countercharge. So it's in a way your countercharger that you can rely on pretty consistently too. 3 copies of Azure Sky. So this I was not playing at first. Well, first I played to get some early game, then I took it out and then now I put it back in. This is good for the Stride decks and Mares. So you're on grade 2 no matter what. You can go literally 4 to 5 turns against another Stride deck, so you need to be able to win that. This will not only help you because it revives something, but it also lets you check the top card. So if you do anything right before your battle phase and use this card to check if you're getting a trigger or potentially another combo piece, manipulate that a little bit better, and you can even adjust your attack patterns if it makes sense to adjust them to. And so like if you have a crit coming, then at that point you're like, ooh, I got something coming that's really good, right? But it's also, it revives grade 2 or greater, so you'll revive your Negrolazys, your Marauding Shades, your other attackers during your grade 2 plays, so that way you can still win and survive essentially. Plus, Marauding Shade is really good because just by having the crest, he's a 10k shield technically still. So you can even intercept with him and then next turn bring him back with Azure Sky without feeling that you just lost an attacker. So the Sweet Shot package, we're playing 2 VO and then 1 of the actual Sweet Shop. You can do 2 and 2, 1 and 1. I went to 2 and 1. I wanted to use Viol because he's a body you can call early on. So this helps with the early game. He does use Assault, so be cognizant of that. That's another reason why Bracing Angel Ladder helps, or rewriting with a Nightrose copy too, if worst case scenario. But he also gets 10k with the Sweet Shot package. But this is a card that I would like to see more often. I've considered bumping it up to 3 and maybe switch up to 2, but there's only so much room. And honestly, once you see these pieces, they're kind of dead afterwards. So that's why I play the 2-1 ratio. And the games that I did lose, some of them, I did not see this, so I did not have enough guard value to actually survive. So I think this package is very necessary for Nightrose to be able to consistently survive long enough to you winning, essentially. Remember, you can use regular triggers, front triggers, OTs, PGs, and this card single-handedly is super helpful. And even in winning the Stride decks and Mare, this works if you start calling your triggers as boosters. I was practicing against Will, so thank you, shout out to Will as well. Being able to not only use them as boosters, but be able to like defend with them too, which is pretty nutty. You could also use cards like Alvina, for example, to bring back your triggers instead of like Negrobones all the time, because your random draw doesn't always guarantee a nice defensive quality card. So you might as well just revive a trigger that's guaranteed 15k. And that sometimes is the defining moment for you to win the grade 2 game, essentially. To further along with defense, Ghost Chase. So This helps you manipulate a little bit of a couple of things. You can get PGs to your hand by reviving them to your field first, and then the triggers, of course, but you could also have a Nightrose copy that you can revive and then use Ghost Chase during your opponent's battle phase to get it back that way too. That's in case if you don't have Sea Strike or don't have the Soul, you know, it's another alternative. Did it come up? Not really, but it is there. When it did come up is the additional, you know, if you call more triggers or PGs, you can not only use Sweet Shop, but you can use Ghost Chase on a second copy of something to further help you with a defense play, essentially. So that came out multiple times during the tournament, so Ghost Chase is still really good. I only recommend maybe one. I don't think I would bump it up to 2, but it is a really nice card. To add some more pressure, I played Nectar. So Bovine was kind of the best play, but again, with numbers and stuff like that, I went back to Nectar, and Nectar helps with that first, second attack where you have that high crit, that high power. You will get to the 15k pretty consistently, and then late game, it's 20, 25, 30 cards in drop, and it's like really strong. And if your opponent can't even guard that in the first 2 attacks, it'll be really hard for them to survive. And also it can force a lot of cards from their hand, making it difficult for your Nightrose swing with your beefy Brigard after that too as well. You can also get this with cards like Sea Strike and Nargoth, Alvina for example too, and then of course Azure Sky too. So you can get this card pretty easily if you milled it. Alvina is really good. I recommend playing 4 copies if you have them. If you don't, you will have to find budget reasons or budget options too. There's a couple of deck lists that you can find too, but Alvina, she not only helps with the Negrobone play early on, but she helps getting those triggers, those PGs as well, so you can capitalize on your Sweet Shop and also your Ghost Chase plays. This also helps you with the early game too, because this is a 10k body or a 10k booster, so you're making 20k columns if you're boosting, or this can be a 10k swing alone while reviving a trigger or something to set up the Sweet Shop. It's like really good. And then later on, you can revive cards like Philander. We do play a copy of Philander, so you can revive Philander for later on. And then also you can use Negrobone to continually draw into cards that way too. We are playing 4 copies of the regular PG because, again, Sweet Shop is very important. Sanctitude is not bad, but it's not as necessary in this metagame. Again, we wanted to make sure we're going against, well, Levy Dress, Raziel, Odium, and then, of course, the occasional Stride deck set. So this came up a lot more often than being a Sanctitude, essentially. You can also call this as a booster, too, so it's actually pretty decent against Behind the Vanguard. At least it's a 5k plus booster anyway, which can make a nice, easier number that way, too. We are playing 3 copies of Negrobone. I was playing at 4, but I feel like 3 is just the sweet spot. Again, you'll reuse the same copy. It'll retire and draw a card every time, so sometimes you'll have 2 on the board, but more than likely you just have 1. This card is a good card to call on your turn 1 and start dishing attacks, and if they retire it, that's fine. Again, your Granblue, your revive it later. Our boy Philander. Philander is good. Again, he's more like an 18k booster for later game, more than he is to set up the drop zone. It's kind of like a supplemental thing. It's not necessary, so you can play this deck without Philander, technically. But I feel like he's an 18k booster that's actually really nice with like a Nectar column, or maybe like your Nightrose Phantasm turn. This is also good with Marauding because you make that magic number still, and then you can use a card like Alvina to be a 10k booster for your Nightstorm column. And then with the triggers, so we are playing for Alana. So again, she can come up, go into Soul, but you could also revive her with Alvinas, for example, for defensive plays. But the Soul is there just in case. Did it come up? Not really, but it can come up. More crit, you want that crit pressure, so maximize it. And again, this is standard, so we can play only up to 8. And in Granblue, we wish to play more than 8, so I do play the stoicheia trigger, which is the Omni trigger, which is an extra draw, an extra front, an extra heal. This is just good all points of the game. You can always try something else if you want to, but it wasn't a big deal for me. And then we have 3 fronts to have that power up pressure on Phantasm turns. Your Obadiah swings are also scary because you do decked in a bit. So going first will give you your other columns a little bit bigger too, which is nice. And they're 20k shields. This is super good with Sweet Shop. So you can revive these 2 and then use them to the guard with. And then, of course, we're playing 4 heals. I just used the vanilla heals because everything does something differently. And the effect heals, I feel like, pretty much lack of better words. So I just went flat out full 15k so I can rely on that. And again, I'm using cards like Sweet Shop and PGs, reoccurring stuff, so I don't miss that variance as much too. And then lastly, for Obadiah, again, sets you up for a stride, but you'll go into this, flip a copy of him, and then literally after that, you'll be going to Phantasm to get the 5 attacks too. And to pretty much wrap up with the video, I won't go too much in depth with the matchups. I won't go too much in depth with the matchups, but I was able to win against ODM. So you're able to revive a second additional defensive quality thing, and you can guard on the first attack because they do have that rear guard that can remove your stuff. So you can get some shield quality at that point. But other than that, you can stay at low damage early on and then make sure you have some early game pressure and kind of win from that. Raziel had a really close game with Angel, so shout out to him. I put him to 5 early on because of crits, and then he came back later on, and I even 6 damage heal like twice. It was like really crazy stuff from the anime, and he was able to lock that in, so kudos to you, amigo. Shurinary matchup was something to point out too, because I won the grade 2 game. Like, I was in a very good position, but due to the nature of Furai and Magen Tenbu and the scale and the crest scaling as well, I knew Shurinui has the potential to really come back and seal the game still, and that's exactly what had happened. I didn't do anything wrong. I think the only thing that that would have helped was Abracing Angel Ladder. I didn't see it. It is what it is. I could have also attacked Impex and make that game easy, but again, everything else was a lot more priority, so I did not play the Impex this time too. I did face a Levy Dress and I did win that one too, and it's a bit of attrition to a degree, but you want to stay at low damage, also dish out damage early on against your opponent. Their early game isn't that great, and then making sure you recover your PGs and your triggers with Ghost Chase and Sweet Shop, you can have a lot easier time guarding their 30k plus columns essentially, and be able to seal the deal by the time that it comes back to you. Also, if they put infinity markers for your boosters, you can just leave those alone and then just rely on your front row to actually be able to still seal the deal as well. So that's pretty much it. I want to give some quick shout out to Nathaniel with practice, Will with practice as well, Shiga, Wayne, Joey, Ross, John as well, specifically for standard of course too, and then of course just practicing with people just in general. So again, couldn't have done this without you guys, so this is something really good. I enjoyed playing the deck, which was really fun playing Nightrose in standard. It felt like G-Era, so if you're a long-time player, I recommend this deck just to have fun, but also like you can still do some nutty plays and give you the advantage of making it into top cut still. So till next time, amigos, bye.